Manitoba Liquor Mart product expert Sheila Nash will join us with her pairings in just a second. I'd like to point out, a bit curious, that there's like 47 people in the studio right now. On a day we had ribs, odd. Susan Riese, Manitoba Pork, an incredible performance. Run down the 3 delicious dishes you made for us today.
Okay, so we had 3 home-style favorites today. Started off with a shepherd's pie, which is essentially a baked casserole topped with buttery mashed potatoes, ground pork, and vegetable filling. The Marsala Chops with the Mushrooms and Leeks, we took a familiar recipe and turned it into fare extraordinaire by slow cooking our rib chops in a rich, flavorful mushroom leek and wine sauce.
They were unbelievable.
And then we ended up with our 3rd recipe, crowd-pleasing Manitoba pork back ribs. Roasted our spiced back ribs low and slow, finished them on the grill with a sweet, sticky Kahlua-infused sauce.
Excellent work.
The recipes for this show and the complete series of Great Tastes are available on the GreatTastesMB.ca website.
Well, let's now have a drink. Sheila, what have you come up with here?
Well, I've stuck with some pretty classic pairings, but a little bit of a twist on them, of course.
Sort of like all the dishes.
Absolutely. To begin with, that shepherd's pie, which had amazing savoriness to it and lots of herbs and spices. Went with Estrella. This is a Spanish lager. Very creamy mouthfeel, great crisp freshness to it. I think it'll complement really well because it is quite complex. It has some coriander and anise characteristics in there. I think it'll pair beautifully with the dish, but still be really refreshing. Cut through, there is some richness from the potatoes and leave you looking for, of course, that next sip or bite. And of course, for the Marsala Chops, what could be more of a classic pairing than apple and pork? Decided to twist it up a bit with some pear. And this is Magners Pear Cider. Of course, there has been gaining popularity with the dry ciders. This one is just lovely. It's very complex. It's got lots of flavors to it, but it's nice and dry. So it's very refreshing. And I think it will work really well with those mushrooms and those leek characteristics, because it is still kind of a delicate dish with a little bit of that tanginess. The cider definitely has some crisp acidity to it and should be very cleansing and delicious, I think.
And what do you do with these ribs here?
Well, decided to go with, of course, very traditional pairing is a beer and ribs. This is the Coffee Porter from Mill Street Brewery coming out of Toronto, Ontario. This is a gorgeous beer. Of course, roasted coffee being brewed in there gives it a whole new level of complexity. Rich, full. I think it's going to pair beautifully with these ribs because you've got that sort of sweetness coming in from that Kahlua, and of course coffee characteristics as well. But because of course it is a porter, nice and rich, it's still going to be very refreshing, very cleansing. And then of course if
what are you doing here?
Well, if beer's not your thing, you could try Betty and Max. This is a great little Shiraz coming out of Clare Valley. Now Australia is no stranger to Shiraz. They go together very well, but this is a region not really well noted for Shiraz. They do it beautifully. It's got a little more hang time, so you're getting nice complex richness to it, but a nice acidity to it. When you're looking at ribs with all of the rub on it and the sauce, you know, you do need something that's going to be cleansing. Otherwise, it's just cloying and you're not really cleansing your palate. I think this Shiraz is going to do it justice. It pairs up well. Flavors are complementing each other, but nice and crisp.
Beautiful. No question, one of the best shows ever. Appreciate you joining us on Great Tastes in Manitoba. Sheila Nash, Manitoba Liquor Marts, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Manitoba Pork, Susan Riese, you outdid yourself today.
Thank you, sir.
That was a clinic, is what it was. Thanks again very much for joining us. Next time on Great Tastes of Manitoba, classics with canola. Cheers.
Great Tastes of Manitoba is presented by Manitoba Liquor Mart. Great Tastes is brought to you by GreatTastesMB.ca. Great Taste is produced by Hummer Productions.